Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. It's not a rest day recap. We're stepping aside from the Vuelta for a second for another transfers roundup. The transfers have progressively come through with more names, big names being announced since our first transfer roundup. And indeed, teams decide just to basically drip feed these announcements. Big names: Julian Alaphilippe, Mark Hirschi, Tudor making big moves, Leonard Kämna, the Red Bull-BORA German star, off. Lawrence Pithie, maybe the most hyped young classics prospect, also changing teams. What does this mean for the relegation battle next year with teams like Cofidis and Astana making huge moves as well? So we already did Ineos and the Vismas, etc., but this is some of the different teams, or like Cofidis and Astana, is interesting nonetheless. Benji, who do you want to start with? Do you want to start with Tudor? I feel like they've made the biggest splash in the last couple of weeks.
I think so as well. I'm very much looking forward to see what Tudor does. And before we get into their newer signings, they've got some riders that are out of contract, like Dainese, for example, is out of contract. Krieger, Eriksson, Talman, Wilk. So you've got riders that are on Tudor now that are out of contract, but who's coming in? And we're going through the list. And first of all, let's start off with arguably one of the two big names towards the team, Mark Hirschi, coming from UAE Team Emirates. I'm looking at Mark Hirschi and I'm thinking, okay, this man in the last 2 years has been a massive UCI points merchant. He's been scoring UCI points left and right, and he's got 2,300 UCI points already this year. He just won Britannia Classic, just won San Sebastian. It's not just the pro races anymore. It's not just the 1.1 races anymore. I feel like he's arguably the best he's been in a very long time at this very moment. And for Tudor to get Mark Hirschi, he's probably not cheap, but he's a guy that is very likely going to score a lot of points. So at first impressions, a great signing, right?
Mark Hirschi, I know he burst on the scene, and yeah, is he going to replicate his 2020 level on DSM ever again? Probably not. But Mark Hirschi's at 90% of that level for 60 race days a year from February through October. That's the thing, man. Like and there was the joke that he kept winning only .pro races, but they were mainly the only suitable ones they would send him to. Like they were not sending him to he did do Canada and stuff, but like last year, 3,000 UCI points, top 10 in the PCS ranking. This year, 6th in the PCS ranking, 2,300 UCI points, and he won his last two races. He won San Sebastian and Britannia Classic. Like, there are a lot of teams, every team, Visma, Lidl-Trek, Ineos, that would sell their right arm to get another one-day World Tour Classic win. These are big races. I know that San Sebastian and Britannia, they're not Lombardia, they're not San Remo, but they are big races. And so yes, there is the UCI points merchant aspect, but he is also 26 years old, you know? It's a great signing.
He's still so young, because Mark Hirschi bursted on the scene so young to the point that he's still so young 4 or 5 years later, which is crazy to think about. Since 2020, he's been here, and now he's leaving UAE. I do like to see that at this point in his career, to see where that goes. He's going to Tudor. The contract is of a length of 3 years, so until the end of 2027, he will be at Tudor Pro Cycling. And he's also not the only signing that feels relatively similar, because who else was in the same group in San Sebastian? Who did he beat at San Sebastian? Julian Alaphilippe of Soudal Quick-Step. And that's another rider that Tudor is picking up. And if we take a look at Julian Alaphilippe, he's not been on a UCI point schedule at Soudal Quick-Step. Obviously, he's been sent to relatively big races, aiming to win the likes of Strade, RVV, but also Tour de France stages, Giro stages, Grand Tour stages, San Sebastian as well. So he's not doing the schedule that Hirschi has been doing for the last 2 years, but he's still got 1,350, 400, 1,400 UCI points after, let's be honest, Alaphilippe hasn't had the best years of his career before 2024. But still, if you send them to the right schedule, and Alaphilippe at 80% can still score a whole load of points. But why are we talking so much about points? What is the situation that Tudor is in at the end of August 2024, because if you don't know, there's this 3-year cycle in cycling. Now it's from 2020. You can tell me. 2023 to 2025?
23, 24, 25 is the 3-year cycle, yep. And then there's the promotion and relegation at the end of that cycle. Annually, there is also the automatic wildcards for stage races and one-day races distributed as well. And so that's why we're talking about points so much in the context of Tudor, because they're a pro-Conti team. That means they do not get automatic invitations to any World Tour race, the biggest races on the calendar. Now, they have got discretionary invitations from race organizers to many races because they're a good team, or because Tudor, the watch company that is obviously Tudor, sponsors the Giro d'Italia, so RCS also give them the invitation.
Politics.
So, yeah, well, yeah. And that's why when people say, Julian Alaphilippe has signed, I'll finish the points thing, but that's why Hirschi and Alaphilippe are huge, because yes, Alaphilippe, he's 32. Are they paying him too much money? Probably. Would I feel comfortable giving Alaphilippe a 3-year deal from ages 33 to 36? I wouldn't personally do it.
Yeah.
But he was much better this year. This year, he completely turned it around compared to last year. You cannot compare the two seasons. Last year was a bit of a disaster, frankly, outside a couple of sprints where he looked okay. This year, he's really actually on a good level. Yesterday in Britannia, he made Group 1, San Sebastian, excellent. He's winning races. He did 100k Giro solo. He's top 10 in San Remo. He was good in January at TDU. He's been good the whole year. So this year, he has turned it around. Yes, as Benji said, is he going to be in 2021 level where he's just stepping off everybody in Leuven? Probably not. But as I said, if you send him to GP Canton Argau with Hirschi, they're going to win. Well, at least it's going to be them against UAE. So that's why they're signing him. What else is people are saying, Benji, with Alaphilippe? They're saying they just bought themselves a ticket to the Tour de France. I'm not sure I agree with that.
Ooh, that's interesting. I think that's partially because then they're looking at the situation of, okay, Alaphilippe's a big name, Hirschi's a big name. Maybe that gets ASO's interested, and ASO says, okay, you're invited. That's one possible thing. But can we also think about the fact that maybe not for next year, but for the year after, they will score so many points in the pro team division that they will have the automatic wildcards to the Tour de France? Yes, that's a possibility in my opinion. So that I see realistic. For next year, I'm not 100% certain, but compared to UNOX, I kind of feel like Tudor is more likely to have a Tour de France invitation next year than UNOX is.
I am not sure because Tissot is the sponsor of the Tour de France, and I'm not sure that ASO want to, because why don't you let Tudor sit out the Tour, maybe send to the Vuelta, but no, they can't do that because of the Spanish pro teams, and then Tudor you assume will automatically get it in 26, and so then ASO doesn't have to invite them. So I'm not sure it is so automatic because of that sponsorship conflict.
I'm sorry, but is that not straight up corruption?
No.
First of all, Tudor
ASO can invite who they want.
Tudor benefiting from having Tudor as a sponsor who also sponsors cycling races and therefore being more likely to get wildcard access. It's not written anywhere, so obviously it's not a legal issue, but it looks a bit weird in my personal opinion. Also from ASO's side, then they have Tissot to then block Tudor if they on merit would deserve it, just because they have Tudor as sponsor. For me, that has no place in sport.
Yeah, I guess they are discretionary wildcards and it's organisers races, but and listen, maybe they do send them because they want Alaphilippe and it's not a problem, but because there's a supermarket sponsor for the Tour de France and they still have Lidl-Trek and Intermarché join the race.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's just something to bear in mind. In terms of the points, I very much, even with this influx of points, I don't see Tudor getting promoted in 2026. They're, I think, well over 5,000, 6,000 points behind Arkea. Behind Cofidis, they're like 8,000, 9,000. they're not going to be able to make that difference up. So what they're going to be trying to do for the next cycle, 26, 27, 28, is to turn into the Alpecin de Koenig of old and basically win the annual ranking of the pro teams and get automatic wildcards to all World Tour events, which they'll be competing against Total and Juno X most likely, or whoever. So
or anyone that relegates from World Tour as well. We got to keep that in mind. And who is that virtually right now that would be relegating
Arkea
to pro team?
And Astana. Who we'll get to in a second. Not Cofidis, 18th, actually with 1,500 points gap on Arkea. So go check out Raul Bancheri, our friend on Twitter, and he updated this recently. Luke will put the screenshots of the World Tour relegation ranking in the YouTube video over where we're speaking. Marco Haller also joins, the Austrian from Bull-BORA-hansgrohe. Fabian Leinhardt from Groupama FDJ as well. He's he's Swiss, I guess. And Fabian Weiss is from the U23 Tudor team. So Tudor really have a structure set up, they've really got a structure. And Weiss is more of a rouleur. He's actually been quite good. And also Aivaras Mikutis, another rouleur, seems pretty good as a classics rider. So we'll
honestly,
see.
Also, the thing with Marco Haller is that every now and then he does score UACI points when you don't necessarily expect it. Like last year, was he not top 5ing Eschborn Frankfurt?
He was 6th in the Olympics.
Olympics. Like every year he has like one race day where he's like surprisingly good in terms of his position in the race. So he's got 450 UCI points. He won't move mountains for the team, but he might be that rider, one of the last that is eligible for their UCI points to count in the team, and that might matter. But also, he's just a good domestique. Like in the classics, he's going to be valuable. So I see him as a solid signing. He's probably not super cheap either, I reckon, Marco Haller, because let's be honest, he's a veteran domestique at this point, but it's not like he's got the greatest results individually. Anyway, Linhart, I don't think really moves the needle. I think they signed him because he's Swiss. But that brings us to the end of Tudor Pro Cycling. Overall, I'm actually
How much do you reckon they
by these
spent?
transfers. What?
I reckon they spent between Haller, Alaphilippe, and Hirschi. I reckon they spent
7 million?
Yeah, 7 to 8 million. That's a lot.
Because like Alaphilippe, I reckon 2 to 3 million. No? Higher.
What do you think
Really?
Total offered him?
I don't have no clue.
So like, there's no way. There wasn't a report Total offered him like Sagan money? Yeah, true. So I reckon Sagan. I reckon they offered him reportedly like 4. According to Total, will offer him just like Sagan's contract. And so, okay, I don't think they're offering him the same because Tudor can be like, why don't you join like a structure, like a good program? But it's going to be no way 2. It'll be above that.
Hirschi?
2.
2 million?
2,
I reckon.
yeah. 2.5
Haller, I reckon, probably towards 750, 500.
million.
Probably a bit higher than I'm expecting. Haller.
Million, maybe.
Really?
Why not? German speaker.
7 figures for Haller is a lot, man.
I don't know. Yeah, sometimes people just put their finger and just go in the wind and what'll it be today? It could be 500, like you say. It's probably more realistic. Yeah, you're probably right there. Moving on to their threats, maybe go to Astana. Astana, Kazakhstan have also been making, I would say, the biggest moves like Tudor. They obviously had the report that they're going to they got Chinese investment into the team. I don't know when that starts. But they are also, maybe they realized a couple of months ago, desperately, fighting for their World Tour life, Astana, Kazakhstan. They're 4,000 points adrift of safety, which is 33% of their current total for the 2.5 years, the cycle, the 18 months in that we're in. And they are really like not scoring not scoring a lot of points at all, which is what we said would happen. I was like, when they signed an old lead out for Cavendish, I was like, great story, but where are these points going to come from? What do you make of the Alberto Bettiol mid-season transfer from EF, Benji? It's kind of like Demar of last year, right?
Yeah, it kind of is. I'm liking it. Like, if you look at Alberto Bettiol this year so far before the transfer, 1,450 UCI points, you might as well get him as early as possible and send him to the Italian Classics, hoping that he can get some points there. Quebec, Montreal. He's also going to Renew Tour, apparently. So I'm more intrigued by the one-day races, what he can do when it comes to his potential there. I reckon he can score some UCI points for this team in the second half of this year and also next season. So he's coming until 2027. I think Bettiol's a good signing. And also,
I think so too, yeah.
It's not Hirschi, but it's like it's a similar transfer. You're aiming for those UCI points, so he's gonna have a specific schedule for that, I'm guessing. I think it's a good signing. If you can do it halfway the season, it's a good move to do that. But it's not the only signing that they're doing, but it is the only one that is.
Were you surprised to see him leave EF? I think EF did the right. It sounded like Vorders, when he was doing commentaries, he sounded pissed off with Bettiol when he abandoned the race. Almost. Because like they've raced in 51 days. And yeah, as you say, like last year, he does all the hardest races, and he did 2 Grand Tours last year. Like when he actually, if you send this guy to like a farmer schedule, if he does La Guelia, all that, like in good shape, he can score so many points.
The thing is, like, the thing with Bettiol, you want him to win a Grand Tour stage if you're EF. And he hasn't done that this year.
So that's why I let him go.
Done that last year. And EF is not in trouble when it comes to UCI points. So I don't think it's a disaster to let Bettiol go, as long as you make sure you can replace that in the long run to make sure you don't get in trouble in the future when it comes to UCI points. But I'd be fine with letting Bettiol go. He's probably not cheap either. I reckon Bettiol's on 7 figures, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. He won Tour of Flanders. Yeah.
Well,
no, EF probably saved 500,000 this year, letting him go.
One trick pony RVV victory.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but I wouldn't expect him to win RVV again.
Don't worry about the future, Benji. The past is what you get paid for. But yeah, EF probably like, wait, he's done 51 race days for us this year. He's not going to do a big, like, he's probably not going to win a Lombardia for us. We can save 500K. Boom. Yep. See ya. And
probably make more.
Maybe more. Anyway, the other incoming for Astana are Wout Poels from Bahrain Victorious. I don't really see that one. Is it to like replace Lutsenko's role in the smaller races like Giro Abruzzo? I don't really see that one.
I'm not sure either. Like, he's still a good climber. He can still top 10 a World Tour stage race. He can still domestique well for a GC leader. He maybe has experience that he can bring down to the likes of a Fortunato. I don't know. Just thinking out loud. Will he move the needle when it comes to UCI points? I don't think so. He's not a bad rider, but you are paying more than 500K, I'm guessing, for Wout Poels as well. So, is it what they need right now? Probably not.
Yeah, anyway, I'm not surprised to see him leave Bahrain though. After what happened with the Giro d'Italia Tour of the Alps disaster, they also signed Nicola Conci from Alpecin de Koenig, which is, I think, a really good signing. I was quite interested in him actually. 27-year-old. He was really, really good in some of these Giro d'Italia breakaways, and as a punchy guy who was climbing very, very well. He actually hasn't done barely any puncher races, one-day races this year. I first noticed him in Arctic Race of Norway a couple of years ago, where he came third on GC, and it's another sort of climber that Alpecin let go, Benji. Like, they get these guys in, Conchi, Vine, Vergalito, even Hermans, and yeah, they sort of plateau and then leave. So I wouldn't be surprised if Nicola Conchi was quite good next year, and they're going to pair him with Scaroni and Bettiol, and they're going to become a one-day race trident, I think.
I think so as well. Now, with Conchi in 2022, he rode some Italian classics, got 2 top 10s in Veneto Classic, Giro del Veneto, so he can get top 10s there. In 2023, he rode the entire Italian classics and got nothing out of that, so that was not what you're looking for. In 2024, none of those races. But then again, the Italian classics haven't happened yet, so he might still race those. I think he's a he's a good bet to try and gamble on for the Italian Classics, for like Gueglia, for those type of races, Canton Zargo, all those races, literally all the 1.Pro, 1.1 hilly classics races. I reckon he's gonna be pretty good at that. Now you said it, Jay Vine leaving, also Vergalito, for example, being in Team Quanchi leaving. It's just not in the DNA of this team. Tobias Bayer also had one great performance at, I think, Burgos in 2022, maybe.
Yeah, Bayer's plateaued. He's a nice rider,
climbing never really come back. And I think it's partially because Vine and Vergalito, those are basically follow-ups of their partnership with Zwift, with the Zwift Academy thing. And then as a consequence, those riders end up there. But that doesn't necessarily make that team a team that wants to focus on GC riders in the first place. So then those riders end up leaving. I still think it was a big mistake to let Vine go. But then again, hey, that's on them. But I don't know, with Conchi, I reckon it's a good signing. But also,
it's the least surprising I ever saw. I don't know who his agent is.
Yeah.
But when I saw Italian sort of Misk puncher with a mid-20s to Astana, I was like, yeah.
I'm also quite intrigued by the last transfer they have just announced, Samuel Cajamini from Colpag Ballon. Colpag Ballon's basically an Italian development team, and he was pretty good at L'Avenir, to be honest. Top 5 in GC, ended up winning a stage. I think the stage that the entire GC raid happened with Blackmore and so forth.
He won the sprint.
He ended up winning the small group sprint, stage 5 it was. And in addition to that, he's just a solid climber, top 7 at Giro Next Gen as well.
So consistent. He actually
rode a Bruzzo as well.
Yeah.
He got 9th in one of the stages or something, top 10, 8th in the last stage.
So Kolpak Balan, they're the team that had a rider you might have heard of called Juan Ayuso.
Yeah.
So they're pretty good development team.
They've had so many riders. If you go back through the history, there's probably quite a few that you will remember where you're like, ooh, this rider was on Kolpak. That's one of those like Bajoli, Kovi, Paul Double.
Damn.
Keep going.
What I always find interesting is this guy the best U23 prospect? No. He's 21. He's not one of these super 18, 19-year-olds. But then I look at his results and I'm like, he has been good, performing. Even in Settimana, he's like there or thereabouts all year. All year he's there or thereabouts, competitive, being good. And that's also, I would think he's more likely to come in next year and be able to contribute something at World Tour level. Is he going to win Lombardia? Probably not. But he can contribute by actually being a consistent professional rider. And so I think it's I think they're going to be very, very happy they got an Italian guy of that level to join. So that's a real coup for Astana.
I'm going to name a few more other riders, by the way. Filippo Ganna, Simone Consoni, Fausto Masnada. All these riders were also on Kolpak in their past.
Really? Damn.
Ciccone.
He went to Bardiani. Yeah. The interesting thing is what Astana are going to do with Cavendish, and they have all the Kazakh riders. So will they? I think they're going to let a lot of those Kazakh guys go. And what are they going to do with them? We should also mention that their biggest rider, maybe outside of Cavendish, Alexei Lushenko, the best Kazakh rider in the world, is leaving. This was very strange. 2-year deal to Israel Premier Tech. I kind of like it for him to have a change of environment. He's been on Astana for 11 years, since 2013. He came from the dev team.
And a bad year.
He had a bad year, yeah. 8th in Liège, won Abruzzo.
Yeah, but that's it.
That's who he is, no? Yeah, it is a bad year for him. He's had much... Last year, he was much more consistent.
Not even a Tour of Oman clean sweep. Come on, Lutsenko. Get your act together. Anyway, he's going to Israel Premier Tech. There's always been this joke in the last 10 years that Israel Premier Tech is kind of the retirement home for punchers. Let's hope that's not the case for Lutsenko. And I feel like if you look at the team of Israel Premier Tech, Woods and Bennett, etc., being there is probably not a
That's why I don't get with Israel. They have so much success. Anyone they sign, under 26.
Yeah.
Anyone they sign under 26, whoever's in charge of that, the strike rate is unbelievable. Sheehan,
Yeah.
G, Blackmore, all these like incredible guys. And then
And
all the guys over
turns
30,
Cool song.
like there's no way they have a good ROI. So I mean, Lushenko, hope he turns it around. But yeah, he's having a change of environment. That was the strangest thing. But he's a Tour de France stage winner. So let's see what he can do. 43 wins in his career. So he is a regular winner, and he's only 31. Turns 32 in about a week and a half. And Astana, Benji, what do you think? I think they're going to need to do more to not get relegated. I don't think Bettiol and Boapools is enough, because Bettiol's also not the most consistent guy ever. There's going to need to be something else.
Exactly. And right now, I project Astana to be demoted to a pro team, and then they'll have to reinvigorate themselves with the Chinese money in the next 3-year cycle. And they're going to be fighting every year for the top 2 spots in pro team against the likes of Tudor is what I'm currently projecting. And it's also like these transfers that they announced so far, that shouts to me that the Chinese money's not there yet. That it's probably for next year. Or
I don't know.
Sorry, but they were talking about super team money. I'm looking at 2.5 million.
Yeah, you're right. And Lushenko is probably their biggest contract outside of Cav, and he's going, so they've cleared up that money. So you're right. But we're hearing rumors of Caleb Ewan from Jayco and Sergio Aguita also. Aguita would be a terrible signing, I think, unless they can get him performing like Bora. He's been horrendous. So
we'll such an Astana signing, by the way.
Yeah, it's just so risky from a ROI perspective. But then that would suggest that they got the money. But the problem is when the money comes late, who's left on the market? When you got the money to spend, we got all this money to spend in September. We're about to mention some young riders. They're not available anymore. And
Higuita would be such a bad signing for a team that needs
and
UCI
Ewan,
points.
they can't sign Ewan. If they need points, they can't sign Ewan to replace Cav.
That'd be awful.
Who they need? Like Machin, there was a report in AS. I don't know if Machin himself, he's the sporting manager at UAE Team Emirates. There's a report in AS, which is Spanish press today or yesterday, I think basically from Machin, saying that he's not had his contract renewed yet with UAE for 25. It expires at the end of this year. He was a scout at Quick-Step. He scouted Almeida. He scouted Remco. He scouted Ayuso, Pablo Torres, Pogacar. You might have heard of him. So pretty good track record, I would say, with the scouting. And he was obviously then promoted to sporting manager. It looks to me like he gave the interview to AS or told them to put pressure on UAE to sign it quicker or give him what he wants. But it just indicates to me that there's not... It wouldn't surprise me, and it's not going to happen probably. I would not be surprised to see a Machin Ayuso double departure to a team.
A package deal.
Because I think that is also why because this is unusual. Usually UAE is happy families. Yeah. And so to have this in the press, I think it's not just money. This is about, I think, what's happening with Ayuso. Ayuso's unhappy. Ayuso's Machin's guy. And yeah, I would, if I'm Astana, I go Machin, Ayuso combination, and I say, here's a blank check if I get the Chinese money.
Ooh. How much money do you reckon the blank check needs to have for UAE to agree?
Giannetti says not, because he says 100 million.
It's 100 million until you see on your paper 8 million, 10 million, then you're like, maybe.
Yeah, Ayuso speaks Italian. He rode for an Italian team, we already just said. So that, if I'm Astana and I do get that Chinese money, that's the first place I go to try and save because then you also get a Vuelta invite every year. Maybe. Yep. But yeah, moving on to let's move on to a bigger team before we move back to the relegation zone. Red Bull-BORA-hansgrohe Benji. They get 2 young prospects, or not prospects, they're performers. Lawrence Pithie and Finn Fisher-Black. Lawrence Pithie burst onto everyone's radar this year with his first his TDU performance on the last stage was very impressive, and then he won
Campbelltown.
Campbelltown was good. Then he won Cadell's ahead of Biniam Girmay, who was pretty good in the Tour de France. Then in Kuurne-Brussel-Kuurne, he followed Wout van Aert and Tim Wellens and Lascano for a time. Then in Paris, he wore the yellow jersey. Then in Brugge de Panne, he was good. And then at Gent-Wevelgem, he was with Van der Poel and Mads Pedersen before he got dropped. But he was like top 3 strongest in the race. Then he was 7th in Roubaix. And then FDJ over-raced the shit out of him, sending him to the Giro straight after. So after being in Australia, he was the hottest classics prospect, right? Who was higher on the hierarchy of out of contract young classics guys?
Well, it's him, it's Lascano. That's kind of the list, but Lascano's also rumored to go to Red Bull Bora. So
really,
yeah, based on that list, then well, first of all, Pithie, yes, he's one of he was the biggest classics prospect, and also because he's so versatile. It's not just he can sprint, he can get over hills, he can get over cobbles. Top 10 at Roubaix. Like, if you can top 10 at Roubaix, you can top 5 at Roubaix.
With
and
the crash.
you can get in the running if there's no superhuman up the road. So it's like, is he a bit of a, time for a weird comparison, a bit of a mini Degenkolb back in the day?
Yeah, I think he's a bit like that. It's hard to know because he has a really good sprint. But he's not 80 kilos. He's not like Van Aert size.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a really. I'm trying to think of he's smaller than Pedersen. I think. I would say he's a bit like Pedersen. Actually, I would say he's a bit like Pedersen because he does like really survive a 5-minute climb very well.
But what is going wrong for now in races like Gent-Wevelgem and Kuurne, where he just couldn't hold on long enough to be competitive?
Oh, he got dropped by Pedersen and Van der Poel.
But in Kuurne, for example, that wasn't Pedersen and Van der Poel, right?
It was Van Aert.
And Lascano and Tim Wellens. Like,
yeah.
What is he missing to be with Lascano and Wellens, etc.? Is it the consecutive hills, or is it?
Yeah, probably 10 watts to his 2-minute power. No, it's not much. And he's doing this at FDJ, and it's his 2nd year on the World Tour contract. And he's just, if he's performing like, to me, Pithie is like, I'll be honest, like, it's pretty high on Pithie. And I think Red Bull getting him is an absolute, like, credits to them. And I'm happy for Lawrence. I think he could be the Matteo Jorgensen breakout of 2025, honestly. Like, he's already shown on that team at 22 years old how he can perform. And he was 21 when he did that in the classics. Like, if Red Bull can get him right, they got him on a specialized Pithie.
Yeah.
Like, what a fucking signing. So I can't wait to see what Lawrence can do there.
And especially if that Lascano rumor does come true, because combining Lascano with Pithie in these races, that's brutal. You've then got a ruler with a guy that can actually finish it off. That's a combination you want in any team. And with Pithie as well, it's not just that he can do the classics, he can also win Grand Tour stages with that. If he gets a 1% better in those races and maybe gets sent to a Grand Tour in better form than the Giro.
They have to send him to the Tour, Benji.
Yeah.
He's their best rouleur to help keep Roglic safe. With
Lascano, probably.
Lascano positioning is not so good.
Okay.
He can ride the front like he's more like Van Baarle to me. Lascano to me is like Van Baarle. Pithie in the hectic would be Bora's best rider.
Yeah, but in the hectic with a little asterisk where
I feel
like he sometimes has the Philipsen antics.
Let him cook.
I feel like, personally, if I had to guess, I don't think many people love him in a sprint, because I feel like he could be a little on the edge of dangerous.
I'm never going to criticize Pithie. I got my list. I got Pithie, Berwick, Haig, Vine, O'Connor. There's a few others. It's not going to get criticized, but yes, Pithie can sometimes be a little bit of a nightmare in the bunch. But listen, when you want someone for a sprint,
yep.
At the end of the day, you're like, well, can he get to the right position or not? Yeah. They've also signed Finn Fisher-Black, another Kiwi. So he was on Jumbo-Visma development team. He was not poached, but UAE signed him. They gave him a World Tour contract. No, no. Like if you have a dev team, we're going to see that later this year.
Yeah.
But if you have a dev rider and a World Tour team offers them a World Tour contract, and you don't offer them a World Tour contract, then they go to that team. And he went to UAE
Exactly.
in 21. He was there for 3.5 years. To be honest, I wouldn't say it. I know he had injuries, but I wouldn't say it was all smooth sailing, or worked out exactly as UAE would have hoped. Otherwise, they're the richest team in cycling.
Yeah.
You know, they would have kept him, or maybe he wanted to leave. Maybe he doesn't want to sit behind a million different young climbers, Del Toro, Ayuso. It goes on and on and on. So I was both surprised and not surprised to see this.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised that he's leaving the team. I'm also quite intrigued for this move as well. Like Pithie, I'm hyped on the transfer. Fisher Black, I'm also hyped on the transfer. He's had a good season, winning like podium Tour of Oman, winning a stage there on Kurayat. Like he ended up winning a stage in Asturias, etc. It's like Burgos podium. He does that through the time trial. I'm curious what the limits are of that. Also, he climbs relatively well, but his time trial is probably one of his better skills towards that. In the Vuelta last year, I vividly remember him being really good in the first week as a domestique. I really think that this could be a guy that if you have a mountain train is super valuable for you in a Grand Tour. And in 1 week races, I want to see where his limits lie.
He's very inconsistent within a race. So he's like consistent throughout the year in the sense that when you look through all his races, there'll be a top 5 in each race. But then in Burgos, as Benji said, you know, he probably should have won the race, but he lost on a short climb, 51 seconds to Koos, and he got dropped by Urko Berade by 20 seconds. Yeah. You know, no offense, but like, and then you see his Watts on Bejes on a similar climb. I picked him, I think, to win Burgos. His Watts on Bejes behind Vingegaard last year is like crazy Watts. So he's suffered from also consistency within these stage races because he's done a lot.
It's also not that he's a shit teammate because on Bejes, yes, he started riding behind
they
Vingegaard
told him to ride.
With Ayuso in the group behind, but that was a team car instruction. So it's not on him, that mistake. Honestly, I'm looking forward to see what this makes at. I think there's still untapped potential in Fisher Black. That's what I'm trying to say. And
he has a sprint. He has a sprint. Yeah. But yeah, like Asturias this year, he wins the last stage, the first 2 stages, he loses a huge amount of time. So I don't know what their plan is with him. Maybe just a Grand Tour domestique. Maybe there were punchy races. I don't know.
Is it me or is it like when you think about Fisher Black and you think about Kurayat, etc., then you also start to think about the Hill Classics, and then he goes to the Hill Classics and has a horrible time this year. I don't know whether it was injury or illness or whatever, but the results just weren't there. Then again, he wasn't leader in those races most likely either. I still expect something in those races from him in the future, you know? So I think there's still untapped potential. How it will come out, I don't know, but
cheap
I guess
replacement for Higuita. Cheaper replacement for Higuita.
He's also better than Higuita, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Not
right now.
Right now, yeah. Right now. Higuita in 2022 in his first year at Bora was like crazy good. He came he won Catalonia, second at Swiss, 4th in Lombardia. I think he was a top 20 rider in the world. Yeah, so they'll be hoping Finn Fisher Black can do that. They also signed Pellizzari, we already mentioned that before. The young Italian climber. Soudal Quick-Step, Benji, they are going back to their roots, sort of, in terms of they've signed Max Schachmann from Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe. So the German-speaking exodus continues. We're going to have 2 more German speakers who are the long-standing members of the team leaving the team in a second. But yeah, Schachmann into Red Bull. I don't know if he won't be super cheap. 2-year deal. He is much better this year than last year. His results actually belie how good I think he was in some races. Is he signed, Benji, to be... To me, he's signed to be support to Remco in all the races Remco does. That's how I see his role.
I think so as well. And yes, it could be like Landa that doesn't take away from potential opportunities in races that Remco doesn't. But I think the main focus for Schachmann will be part of that Remco train, He's got a bit of an engine. We've seen that in the past when he still did rolling TTs back in the day. Like, he's got that. He's a medium mountain rider. I think he's a good medium mountain domestique for the team, but you want to have the Sharkman that performs, because sometimes Sharkman just doesn't perform, and that's not the one you want. But in 2024, good season when it comes to performances. When it comes to results, maybe less so, but results don't always show the performances that happened in the race, and that is I need to combine all three of the Soudal Quick-Step signings. Max Sharkman from Red Bull Bora, Ethan Hayter from Ineos, and Pascal Eenkhoorn from Lotto Destiny. Sharkman and Hayter, is it me or is there a bit of the gamble side to it? With Ethan Hayter, it's a gamble signing Ethan Hayter. If you take a look at what he's done in his life, like he bursted onto the scene. Was it 2020, 2021, where he was destroying the likes of, he didn't win Tour of Britain. I think Wout van Aert ended up winning, but he won multiple stages, if I recall, in that race. Then Tour of Norway 2021, won multiple stages. He was the Thibaut Nys of 2021. Is that the right thing to say?
I think so, yeah. He won like 10 races a year.
Yeah. And that has evolved into an Ethan Hayter over the last 3 years, gradually, that yes, he still won Polonia because of the time trial, etc. Yes, he can climb relatively well combined with a very good time trial, with a solid, okay sprint that hasn't come out that well recently because his positioning in the bunches isn't good enough. He's not at the front when he needs to. He sometimes can't get to the front in time for the sprint to happen in the first place. Because he's at the back, he gets caught out in sprints. That's a major weakness, but if there's a team that has experience with positioning, it's probably also Soudal Quick-Step. So I would hope that Soudal Quick-Step can help him with that issue, because that is preventing him from getting results. But then also there were moments this year where I was expecting him to win from a position he was in the right position, and his sprint just wasn't on par. I do think there's still significant untapped potential with Ethan Hayter, but it's impossible to not call this transfer a gamble, right?
Yeah, because it's not going to be 100,000. Now, we don't, who knows what the money is. It could be, if it's a cheap, like, make it or break it, like this is your last chance to prove it in World Tour deal, this is the best spot for Ethan Hayter to perform. If you can't make it happen as this sort of profile of rider on Quick-Step, then it won't happen. So I think they're trying to replace Alaphilippe in the aggregate with Sharkman and Hayter. Hayter also can be a very, very good stage racing domestique. We saw that in Romandy. He's a time trial rider. Soudal Quick-Step have a fast time trial set up. Will they get his TT going well again? So I think it's a great signing for Hayter. But for the actual Quick-Step's Cobble Classics team, especially as Asgreen is leaving, Lefebvre confirmed that, their Cobble Classics team, Benji, is looking horrific. Now, we are fully in the Remco Evenepoel era, podium the Tour, second or third best rider in the world, however you want to look at it. But still, they are going to be horrific in the Cobble Classics. It
depends, eh? Dwars door Vlaanderen RVV, Remco is apparently going to ride according to Lefebvre.
Oh, okay.
And if that's the case, then the Remco era will expand to the Classics.
Yeah, then Remco covers all issues, yeah. But they did.
But that's dangerous.
They didn't get Pithie. Pithie on Quick-Step would have been nasty. Imagine Pithie, Manier, like then you're really developing a young core.
If you're Pithie, why would you sign for a Quick-Step? What in the last 3 years has shown that in terms of the Cobble Classics, their performance is good across the board. Like from a team perspective on the Cobble Classics, not good in the last 3 years.
Quick-Step are better than Red Bull as a team. Red Bull got this shiny veneer about them.
I disagree.
Bora, and then I look at their points with a double the budget, maybe a Quick-Step, and I'm like, well, why are Quick-Step so much better?
I disagree, because Red Bull is still on the uprising of that budget. And Quick-Step's budget, but Patrick Lefebvre is always complaining about a limit of money. There's always going to be that limit of money, apparently, on Quick-Step's side, is how I see that. Half a year ago, we were talking about the team potentially merging with another team and folding, and
I just mean performance.
That's also...
I would also be more comfortable signing a 3-year deal with Red Bull, because you know they're going to be there in 3 years.
Yeah. Current performance, maybe I agree. although the Cobble Classics, I disagree with the last 3 years, even though Red Bull hasn't had the greatest results at Cobble Classics either.
Yeah. Jordy
But
Mavis.
future performance, I would expect Red Bull to get the upper hand due to budget.
Yes. But yeah, I'm just saying that the Cobble Classics do not expect Quick-Step to improve. I know they signed Pascal Enkhorn. He was at Jumbo, then went 2 years to Lotto Destiny.
Yeah, but it won't move the needle for Quick-Step's Cobble team.
He doesn't win races. He's just like he's just a rouleur domestique. He's 27 though, and Quick-Step's a good spot for him, and he'll slot in. Maybe he can do Lampard's role if Lampard keeps declining. But
Enkhorn has had solid results in his life. Like he podiumed Volta Limburg Classic this year, etc. He almost won a Tour de France stage last year. That being said, I've never seen Enkhorn do what Lampard did at his peak at all.
No. And so, Quick-Step is circling the wagons more around Remco, which is probably the right thing to do because, building a classics team is difficult. And why build a classics team when you're not going to beat Van der Poel anyway?
But do you feel like with only Schachmann really changing around Remco, that Quick-Step is moving at a fast enough rate for Remco to be happy about that to stay in the first place?
Bro, I mean, why look at Red Bull this Vuelta and look at Quick-Step in the Tour. He'd have to be insane to go to Red Bull.
I disagree. Future performance? Sorry, but there's so much more security at Bora. There's so much more money at Bora to make your team as good as it can be in the future.
He's not on 500k a year.
He's more likely to win the Tour de France in 3 years at Bora than at Quick-Step, in my opinion. Because who knows, Quick-Step might not even exist in 3 years.
Yeah, and maybe Red Bull is like, it's a process, isn't it? Like, look at UAE. UAE's tour team in 2020, they would not have been able to carry the race for Pogacar.
Yep.
No, not at all. They took Christoph, and look at how they now 2024. It's a completely different support team around Pogacar. Tactically, they're way better. So you're right. It is, and it can happen across 3-4 years.
But also, I don't think you can compare the Quick-Step Tour de France to the Vuelta of Bora, because Vuelta's in a position where, Bora's in a position where they need to control the race a little bit.
Yeah. And Quick-Step let Kuss in the break last year.
And Quick-Step was also not in a position that they needed to control much either, and there were invisible rides like Vervaeke after he DNF'd, remember?
Lampard was awful in this tour.
Yeah, like I agree. We're probably both agreeing that they're relatively close right now. You lean more towards Quick-Step right now, but I'm thinking about the future. It's like, I'm sorry, but in 3 years, I feel like it's more likely to win the Tour de France at Bora. And if you can pick up a bit more money by going there in the first place, why not?
I think all three of these riders could be in Remco's stage racing rotation. To be honest, Hayter to pull hard. Enkhorn is the ruler. Schachmann is the sort of hill lead out. I wouldn't be surprised to see Schachmann do the Le Redoute lead out. So it's especially if Van Wilder leaves or is not happy to do it. Van Seven on obviously whatever the fuck he's doing. So they need riders to do that.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't really see, apart from getting someone like Pithie, I don't really see too much else they could have done. Lidl-Trek, Benji, Kämna and Teutenberg, the Germans. Lidl's a German company. They get maybe the best German rider of the last 2 or 3 years, Leonard Kämna, and Teutenberg is obviously the best classics German prospect. In U23s, he's won a boatload. Paris-Roubaix U23s is not too bad. I would say this man's the next Degger. Teutenberg. He's the next Degenkolb.
How versatile is he? He's pretty versatile, right? Like he's won quite a bit of sprints. He's competed in quite a few sprints, but I also lean more towards a classic sprinter vibe when I see Tim Teutenberg again. It's like with U23, yes, there's quite a few. He won Roubaix U23, but it's always hard to compare Roubaix U23 to the big Roubaix, but I reckon he's kind of. Is it weird to say German mini Bonen?
Oh, well, maybe. I would say.
I said mini.
Yeah, more like Degenkolb maybe. The Bonen was pretty good, as much as I might dislike him. So
that's why I said mini.
Yeah, he's the little Bonen.
1.83 is actually still quite tall, but
yeah. He, as you say, Benji, he's not a pure sprinter, although he's won like a few sprints, but actually he's more the guy that he's always there.
German Coquard.
No, he's a bit bigger. He's a bit bigger than Coquard, I think. But he gets over a hill fine. If you look at some of the Baby Giro stages where he's up there in the sprint, he got beaten by Paul Magnier in a uphill drag after some hills where he also beat Brennan. If you saw Paul Magnier sprint yesterday, there's no shame in that. And of course, it was always that they were going to bring him into the team. They've also signed Kämna. I think they did that contract before. I don't know if it was before or after his accident.
Oof.
I don't know. They gave him a 3-year deal. Leonard's back training, and I hope he is. He seems to be doing okay, and so I'm glad Leonard got that 3-year security. As he's 27, turning 28 in a month, or in a week or two, and but also I don't really see why Lidl need Leonard. I like Leonard; he's also on my list. Cannot criticize him ever, but I also don't see what Lidl need from him.
I agree with you on that, but still, it's like top 10 Italiano, good climber, and he's a good domestique in your climbing team. But I feel like Lidl's main issue right now is that if you look at the leaders for GC, Geoghegan Hart has been struggling all year with injuries, so we don't know what his potential is at Lidl-Trek so far. On paper, based on previous Grand Tours, he can fight for a podium in a Grand Tour based on that, but we haven't seen that in a while. Ciccone, that's a top 10 GC candidate. And he doesn't do that often in the first place. Stage wins, possible, definitely. Kämna, yes, he can maybe top 10 a Giro.
Yeah,
but I'd more lean towards Mountain Domestique at the moment for another leader in the first place.
For who though? Like
that's the thing. Skjelmose, like it's also right now he's also a top 10 candidate for a Grand Tour.
Yeah, I see.
Great one-day racer.
Kämna and Ciccone are very similar riders. Leonard's a little bit, not a little bit. Leonard is significantly better in the time trial. Ciccone is more punchy on a steep gradient against GC guys. Like Leonard would never beat Roglic in that uphill sprint in Catalunya last year.
Yep.
But Leonard is more of an all-around rider. So I think the reality is, Benji, he's a big German rider. He's won stages in all 3 Grand Tours. He's young. Yep. Maybe they got a bit of a deal because he had the injury, and Lidl is paying a shitload of money. It's a German company. We saw they sent the best classic squad possible to win every stage of the Lidl Deutschland Tour, and so they need Germans, and so that's why I think Kämna's in. Not because he fills some gap they had, although they haven't won from the breakaway this year in a Grand Tour.
What's sorry?
Yeah, they haven't won from the break in a Grand Tour this year. Correct. So,
but it's also because they restricted themselves to GC for a long. Like Ciccone, for example, he'd be the guy to win from breakaways, but he ain't going in those breakaways. Maybe Pedersen would have won from a breakaway in the Tour de France at some point if he was in the breakaway like he had done in the past, but he crashed out. Like, and then in the Giro, you can't blame them for focusing on Milan sprints either.
No. They won 3 stages and the Maglia Ciclamino. It's pretty good. But they haven't won a World Tour breakaway this year, which is maybe where Leonard can step up. That's his forte for them. But yeah, it's I think little Benji next year. Teutenberg's going to be in the classic squad. They got Sturven, Pedersen, Teutenberg, Kirsch, Schoens, Danhola. It's a top 3 class. It's like Visma, Alpecin, Trek, and then I think there's actually a huge gap to everybody else. Trek maybe even better than Visma next year. Who knows? Like how good Teutenberg can be. So their classic squad is pretty nasty. They are very full. For 2025, they already have 29 riders under contract, the most of any team. There's one spot left. It's rumored to be Søren Kragh Andersen, and that would also bolster their classics team as well. But then that leaves, where Söderqvist or Behrens from the dev team might go. Breaking moves. To steal from part of my take, Luke just says that Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe have announced the Van Dijk brothers.
Yep, that is correct. They have announced that.
Benji doesn't give a fuck.
I'm sorry, but
what do you mean?
To have breaking news because the Van Dijk brothers signed for a team. they're solid classics riders, and add that to Pithie and rumored Lascano. We'll keep that as rumored for now because we don't know if it's official or not. I think that adds to the team. I think they're both strong riders, and
I think it makes sense for both parties. Red Bull, as we said, the classics team has been atrocious for 2 years. They got Pithie in, maybe Lascano.
Yep.
You need support riders or young guys around him. They're 20. What are they? How old are they? 23? 24?
24.
They both. Where's the opportunities to win at Visma?
And also, they're not at their ceiling yet.
Exactly.
Like, a top 10 at Roubaix, yes, I'm still saying it's a top 10. Just because you couldn't sprint on the track itself doesn't mean you didn't survive the call was in a top 10 position in the first place. And then 19th, I think, for the other one. I'm sorry, but how am I supposed to know which of the two gets which result? They look the same.
No,
their names sound the same.
Tim's been better this year. Tim actually, I think Mick might have been better in U23s. I can't remember, but Tim actually this year has been excellent.
I think it strengthens Bora's cobble team even more than how we went through it in the first. I'm really curious to see Lidl-Trek if Søren Kragh indeed ends up joining, to see Bora with Pithie, with rumored Lascano, with Van Dijk brothers. Like, classics will get a bit more interesting, I reckon.
Yeah. And again, it makes sense for them to go to Red Bull because, like, they can get leadership at these races. They can get leadership. They can go in breakaways in stage races where Roglic isn't there. So, like, actually, Tim climbs very well. He can even go to Amstel Gold Race, and you'd be surprised, like, the result he could get. So,
if
I think it makes sense.
Gets in a third week Tour de France breakaway like Campenaerts was, he can compete for the victory in my opinion.
He can. And also he did some good lead-outs for Olav Koy this year, I thought, in Paris-Nice, in the stage 2, or no, stage 1.
Where does that leave Visma Leasebike when it comes to their classics, etc.? Because they signed Zangel, etc. Campenaerts is now also an official transfer. Campenaerts joining Visma Leasebike from Lotto Destiny. Is the Van Dijk brothers leaving, replaced by Campenaerts joining? Because
no, he's for stage races, mostly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Campenaerts also is a pretty good classics rider as a domestique. The problem is, Benji, like, say you got Gent Wevelgem, Van Aert's there with the door.
Yes.
You gotta fill in the 7th. You got Ado Affini. He's going to do the grunt work, and you got to have the 6th guy. You also need another guy to do a lead out into the first Camelberg. It's a lot easier to say to Campenaerts with 1 week notice, "Hey, can you fill in and do that? We just need you to help them." Tim Van Dijk and Mick Van Dijk are 23, 24 years old, and they are good enough also to compete themselves. They've proved it. They're good enough to compete for top 10s. It's difficult to then say, ruin your whole race and do a lead out on the Camelberg for Van Aert.
Yeah, but that's part of being part of a super team like Visma Leasebike. So I understand.
No, I'm not saying they refuse to do it, but I'm saying it makes sense that could happen in the future. They've been good teammates.
Could that not happen with a Pedestrian Hagenes in 1.5, 2 years then?
Exactly, but that's where I'm like, Zangler, Perstrand, Hagenes. There's only 7 spots. Van Baal is still there. Tej Benoot, you have to send. You got the door. Van Aert
is gone.
Jorgensen's pretty good classics rider from memory. So
Julian
it's just this. Julian got extended.
Well, hey, you need someone to do that work.
That's what I mean. So it's a lot easier to ask more experienced guys to have been around. But yeah, I think it just makes sense, and it makes sense for Red Bull to be stocking up on young classics talent to fill that. And we haven't even mentioned Emil Herzog, who's one of the big German classics prospects, and who knows where his ceiling lies. He's only 19 years old in his first year in World Tour this year. So Red Bull are indeed building for the future with their classics. Lidl-Trek are kind of here right now. Let's move maybe down the pecking order, Benji, to Cofidis.
Yes.
We should have led you. I'll let you do this because it's your big moment.
The number one transfer of this entire video is Alex Aramburu going from Movistar, the UCI points guru, the descending masterclass, demon descender, king of the world, Alex Aramburu joining Cofidis. I need to have a major say about this. Aramburu is a 1,500 UCI points merchant every year. I think this is a great transfer for Cofidis, but I also think he's probably not as cheap as people think. Right.
No, he's not. He's not on a free transfer.
No, but like, how much would an Aramburu cost these days? Because the UCI points being so valuable has given this class of riders so much extra value. Without UCI points, how worthless is an Aramburu in your team?
What's a UCI point worth?
I think 1,000.
1,000 euros
could arguably be 1 million.
I reckon so. Yeah. So he scored 1,500 UCI points last year, 700 the year before. Averaged the two.
He's half a Hirschi.
1,000. So yeah, I reckon Aramburu about 1 million, 1 to 1.25.
Yeah, which. Imagine if UCI points didn't exist. This guy would be begging for bread on the street corner.
No, when he's Spanish national champion. Come on.
You know what I mean? It's like UCI points gave so much extra value for riders like Aramburu.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, to be honest. Like, I'm not complaining. But it's also, is he going to win races for Cofidis? Maybe here and there he can win a small race. But it's more getting that consistent UCI points. And I think I've been pretty critical about previous transfers of Cofidis this season. Like, I don't see it in Dylan Teuns. Yes, he can get a top result every now and then, but UCI points-wise, on average 600 max in the last X amount of years. And then I'm looking at the other transfers that we went through. Tuze was interesting because he's probably cheap and can top 10 1.1 classics. That's intriguing. But the other two that are also on the menu here, Emmanuel Buchmann from Red Bull Bora and Simon Carr from EF Education Easy Posts. It's interesting because, like, Simon Carr is really inconsistent.
You can say that again.
I'm waiting for you to fill in.
Well, no, you're right. Like, he won his first race of the season, and then he won in Tour of the Alps, and then at Burgos, Tour de l'Ain, he was no good. I don't know what's wrong because he DNF'd the Giro. I think he might have crashed on stage 3, 2 months off. Then yeah, it was no good at Tour de l'Ain and Burgos. So I don't know, but he's not really for points. I think he's a climber that they think could win from a breakaway in a stage race. Whereas,
but
yeah,
if you're Cofidis, should you even be thinking about, can I win a stage from a breakaway instead of just trying to secure relegation for the next year?
Yeah, like, that's the thing. Simon Carr doesn't really help too much with that in terms of points. He might get you a big win, but that's why I think Aramburu is their best signing by far, because he also does a hard schedule oftentimes. And like he came 3rd and 4th at Montreal and Quebec last year, scoring 600 UCI points. If you put him on the French Cup circuit, Aramburu, he really is a versatile good rider, and he can score a lot of points. So he's only 28 years old.
Will they use him to lead out Kokar like Zangla was?
No, I don't think so. I think they're going to be so desperate for points. Then in the October planning and November planning, they're going to plan his whole season around points, I would guess. And also, they always sign Basque riders. They sponsor the Vuelta Cofidis, so they always have Basque and Spanish riders, like Izaguirre they signed a couple of years ago. Bookman is actually the interesting signing. He is another example. So there's been the triple German exodus, as I said, Kämna, Schachmann, and now Buchmann from Bora-Hansgrohe, or now Red Bull Bora-Hansgrohe. He goes to Cofidis. It's a 1 year, apparently, according to PCS. I think they are, well, again, at Tour de Hungary, he was really good when he was in the shape he got snubbed from the Giro. He came second, and he was the strongest uphill. It just wasn't too hard, the climbs. I think they are going to send Buchmann to a lot of .pro stage races and the Giro to try to top 10 the Giro and top 5 smaller stage races.
I think so too. Maybe he's kind of the guy you want to have the results of Izagirre with.
Yes.
Because Izagirre 1-2 years ago was always top 10ing 1 week races. I think Buchmann's that guy you want to try and get those same results with. My main question is, this guy got 4th in the Tour de France before, etc. How expensive is a Buchmann in 2024? Because he won't be on 250k. I'm leaning more towards between 750 and 1.5 million.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's a risk because he's also coming from a decent performance environment, although he was clearly not happy this year. So how much does that bear in mind? At Cofidis, he basically gets to, I would say, be the leader of any race he's in, because they are not going to make him ride for Jon Izagirre's GC most of the time. They'll probably split their schedule. So he might be happier at Cofidis, but yeah, he's 31. It's a risk. He's turning 32 in November. It's a risk. It is a 1 year. To me, it's hard because when you're Cofidis, you can't just sign any rider you want. Like, it's hard. How do they convince Ethan Hayter to come?
Yeah.
Like, they can't. So, or who else have we had on this list? How can they convince Bettiol or Alaphilippe or something? Like, they can't. So they got to pick their battles. Will it pay off? I wouldn't be surprised to see Buchmann actually back to like top 5, top 6, at least smaller 5-day stage races.
Possibly. I see that possibility as well. Will he top 5 a Grand Tour? No, I don't see that. Top 10, that is possible. But overall, we went over every single team here. We haven't done every single transfer in the world because there's been a lot of transfers in the last 2 weeks, but we'll probably do another one of these at some point once some other big names have been announced. But so far, which teams are like winning the transfer market, you'd say? Because I'm impressed by Tudor and I'm impressed by Red Bull Bora at the moment.
It's hard because like Tudor just spent a shitload, right?
Yeah.
Like,
but they spend it the right way, in my opinion.
For what they need, yeah. For what they need, which is a big blocks of points. Red Bull, Red Bull's hard to argue with the 3 young guys they've signed. 5 young guys they've signed now. I think Trek just fucked up their transfer window last year. They signed way too many guys on 2-year deals who were like not very good, and everyone could see that. And then they didn't leave themselves enough space to sign more young guys this year. But they're doing fine with what they have. I think.
Imagine if you had that budget this year to spend on the likes of Pithie, etc. to begin with.
Exactly. So I think they kind of stuffed themselves last year, signing too many riders on 2-3-year deals. I don't really have a strong view on any of them, to be honest. It's a lot of like Cofidis, Astana. They're just both gambling to get points, right? Like, Soudal Quick-Steps I don't like so much, to be honest. Like Schachmann, I don't know.
I'm not sold either.
Yeah.
There's too much gambling going on at Soudal Quick-Step.
Yeah. Encorn's fine, but yeah. So, I don't know. Like, they're all interesting.
When I look at Soudal Quick-Step's transfer, Hayter and Schachmann won't be on a little bit, won't be on like 2 million. But it's also, if I see those names, then I said, it's a gamble. But also, to me, it looks like Soudal Quick-Step is weird to say moneyball too much, as in like they're trying to spend as little money as possible on riders for a specific role, to the point that I don't necessarily seeing it working out perfectly.
To be honest, like I would rather Quick-Step had signed Nicola Conchi instead of Schachmann.
Really?
To me, that's more Moneyball stuff.
Because how much do you reckon they spend on Schachmann?
$1 million plus.
Well, it's quite a few riders we just went through today that I'd rather see in that role that are also roughly $1 million plus.
Maybe less. But
I would hope less. I would hope it's $750K for Quick-Step. For Schachmann, like, I hope it's $7 million.
Conchi be on like 250, 300.
Yeah.
But he's not been as good as... I mean, Conchi was in the move with Schachmann in Giro Stage 1, but Schachmann made it over the top. So Schachmann is better, but you have to pay a lot more for that. Whereas Conchi, I don't know, I think he...
Who would you rather have in your mountain train in a Grand Tour, Schachmann or Wout Poels?
Poels.
And with Jan Geert's contract ending...
I wouldn't... Poels is also like... He's turning 36, no?
Yes, but a 1-year deal. Last year they should have had a 1-year deal with Poels, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Already.
He's turning 37 this year. His level, although they messed up his calendar, his level was pretty good in the races he thought he was doing. Yeah, I would rather have Poels. Yeah, Poels is good.
Would you rather sign Finn Fisher-Black or Ethan Hayter?
What, same money?
How much money do you think they're off? Do you think Ethan Hayter is more expensive than Finn Fisher-Black?
Let's say same money.
Yeah.
Who am I?
You are Quick-Step.
Hayter.
Oh.
Hayter. Because it's boom or bust. Like, it's just clearly not worked at Ineos. Maybe Lefebvre can get the best out of him. Maybe it doesn't work. I would say that's because
Fisher-Black's the safer pick, but maybe Hayter has a bigger ceiling.
Like, if you can get Hayter back to where he was in 21 and you get his TT firing, and I for sure believe he can be a very good mountain domestique. Like in the Castroviejo role, he's excellent. So I think actually Hayter, because Finn Fisher-Black, Quick-Step don't need someone to win Tour of Oman. They need people to help Remco.
Yeah, but Fisher-Black can also help Remco. But
he's actually not been consistent in World Tour stage races as a mountain domestique. He's a bit like McNulty.
Vuelta last year in the first weekend on half the race, he was really good as a domestique, though.
For who?
Well, he went up the road, but he had the level to be a good domestique.
Yeah. I think Quick-Step need Hayter more. They need Hayter more than Finn.
I see that.
Red
Bull,
of the
ceiling.
Yeah, and also just that middle guy to pull hard. Like, who was pulling on the stage, the Cuyol stage? They had to basically have the tacit agreement that UAE would keep it at 4 minutes on stage 20. Like, whereas Hayter could have just done that himself the whole stage on that stage. So I think, but I love seeing riders in different environments. So I'm keen to see how Finn goes. I'm hoping he kicks on at Red Bull, and indeed he can, if he gets his TT. His TT's already excellent, and his climbing's excellent, so he should be really good in 1 week races. And yeah, it's an interesting transfer window. I think that's all, Benji. We better get off the line, and so no one else announces anymore while we're on the line.
Exactly, because they're all announcing it on this rest day. And I'm like, we gotta finish quickly. I don't want to have to talk for another hour about this rider and this rider.
So next rest day, we might do another one, but it might be the women's transfers. There's been a few transfer announcements. We're obviously waiting for the two big ones, which is Demi Vollering and Elisa Longoborghini. They are the two transfers that I just saw Elisa actually riding here. So I don't know if she's preparing for altitude, but preparing at altitude for what? Worlds maybe, but we're going to wait for those big transfers because there's been no one on that scale yet. But I hope you enjoyed this transfer recap. Until tomorrow's recap of Stage 10 of the Vuelta. Ciao.